3, 2, 1. Hello again. I put together something, actually. I don't do this often, but I've made some notes on this for those who mourn. And almost everybody mourns at some point in their life and grieves. And as you all know, if you follow this channel at all, I've really lost, and within 2 years I've lost my mother and a woman that I love very much, Jen. And then right after she went, my dog went suddenly. So I've been grieving, but I've come through it, I think, for the most part. But I had some help. And the help came from what I would call post-mortem, after death, after they died, spiritual visitations. And I would say they came during dreams, but I would not call these dreams, and I will get into that. Now, I hate to say it, but I made some notes for this because I had 11 points that I wanted to cover. And some other things, and I don't want to go any longer than I have to with this, you know, because sometimes I make these videos and they're so long I don't even watch them, to be honest. But this one I made some notes, 6 pages, large print. Grieving and mourning are rooted deep in love and relationship. When you grieve somebody, when you mourn, the roots of that hard time are in love and relationships that were close to you. And love and relationships are very important to God. I dare say love and relationships are central to God and God's word for us, and our purpose perhaps there. And there's a lot of scriptures in the Bible on this. I'm just going to read 3. Psalm 34:18. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed spirit. Psalm 34:18. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed spirit. And then in Matthew 5, verse 4, the words of Christ in the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Matthew 5, verse 4. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And one more from the Bible. There are more, but I'm only going to do 3. I think covers it for now. In the book of Revelations, the last book of the Bible, as you know, chapter 21, verse 4. He shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no longer. I'm sorry, let me read that again. He shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. He's talking about the second coming of Christ. Revelations 21, verse 4. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. So it's important to the Lord. He sees our suffering. He sees our heartache and our mourning, brokenheartedness. And it would be important to God to attend to us. In fact, Christ himself said, Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. So I've got some notes. I was comforted because I was mourning, like in a dark tunnel with no end to it. The purpose in life is gone. A major shakeup in my life because these people and even this dog were central to me. Central. And when they're removed, there's some big empty places. Big parts of the machine that was me, suddenly gone. But it's part of life, it's natural, but still. So, all right, other things. A lot of my Christian stories came from earlier in my life. You know, like when my first vision of the angels, and then the man on the bridge, and some other miracles were like as a child, in my 20s and part of my 30s. And I thought in more recent years that sort of spiritual events were just happening to me then. Then it seemed like all I was getting was ghost stories, hauntings. And the only thing of God for me during those hauntings that I could sense was that He was protecting me and giving me assurance of things, and maybe teaching me some things as well about these things. But it's become clear to me recently that that's not the case. Recent events with visitations of lost loved ones and of learning to pray, I learned a lot how to pray for these things. A lot. And I had advice from some of you. I have the Bible. I read about what the church says, but I really had to start from scratch and get down on my hands and knees and ask God how to pray for somebody who died. Whether I should even be praying, because some people said it's a waste of time, and I'm sorry, I just don't see it that way. It's fine that you do. So it was really a time of learning for me. I couldn't have learned these things without the loss of my loved ones recently, my mom, Jen, and my dog, whom I love deeply. Very kind of close together. Recent events with visitations, I read that, of lost loved ones, and learning to pray, and going to battle. I went to battle for Jen, like spiritual warfare, seriously. And I'm not going to cover that, but I did. Because I felt that she needed my prayers. And there are some that say, you can't pray for this, too late. And there's a lot of Christians that say, yes, not only can you should pray for people, your loved ones, after they die. And it's important that you do. And I believe that, honestly. You can believe what you want. And we all, even those that believe what I'm saying, nobody believes exactly the same thing. So we have to accept each other. Now, I don't want to tell anybody to go against anything that the Bible says or what they believe the Bible says. I'm not trying to superimpose my words over that by any means. I'm just relating my experiences, my testimony, or my experiences, and talking about some things I've given it some thought, things I've learned by looking at these things. So I went to battle prayerfully and even suffered a demonic attack, which was real. I won't cover that again. One page down. And I learned to pray from the Spirit, even more so. Experiencing grieving and solitude and rejection. I've had people close to me reject me, and I've been in complete solitude and isolation through all this. It's like somebody I work with said, Tim, you're alone with your thoughts way too much with this period in your life. And yes, they were right, but there's nothing I could do with it. Make a YouTube video. Talk to God. Maybe there's a reason for it. I believe that. And I've faced rejection. People have not been kind to me, a lot of people. A lot have, but a lot haven't. And these visitations and lessons, I learned that I can pass these on. These kind of events and lessons I would not have wanted to undergo in younger years. It occurred to me while I was making these notes tonight that the lessons God taught me younger in life were one thing, and the lessons He's teaching me now, I wasn't ready for these kind of lessons as a child. I certainly wouldn't have wanted these kind of lessons younger in life at all. So God knows when to teach you what He wants to teach you and take you where He wants to take you for whatever purpose. What I'm imparting here is my experiences, observations, and views. This should in no way supersede God's Word in the Bible. That's my disclaimer, and I mean it. So with that said, for those who mourn, you know God holds a special place for you. So it's a worthy topic to talk about. These are my 3 post-mortem spirit visitations and 11 things that I can say I've learned from them. All right. The first thing I want to impart. A dream versus an actual visitation. There's a difference. Was it just dreams? I mean, I've read the psychological arguments that these sort of things are probably constructs from my head, get me through the grieving, part of the healing. Like there's a psychological reason, and there's others that believe, no, these were actually visitations from beyond of loved ones. And I believe that. This has only happened 3 times in my life. I've said this in my other video, so I'm recovering that a bit. But you will know the difference between dreaming about somebody you know, maybe somebody you love, and actually seeing that person like they're sitting across from the table from you, talking to you. You'll know, because you'll know, like I have to say, you know the difference between a dead body and a living person. And I mean, I've seen some dead people in the army and in other places. Some of them look peaceful, some of them didn't. But you know instinctively, they're dead. That person is not there. That's just, their body. And it's the same thing as if you have a spiritual visitation of somebody. You know instinctively, you're in their presence. You just know it. What did I have for notes? That was takeaway number 1. So I want to get through this without digressing too much. As you know instinctively, if the actual person before you is before you, just as you know the difference between a dead body as a cadaver, whatever, dead body, versus the person, which is immortal, which is the immortal soul and the personality. You'll know the difference between the real thing. And I've dreamt about people plenty of times. My mom, Jen, I don't know if I ever dreamed about my dog didn't pay me a visitation, I know, but you'll know the difference. You'll know. And if you've ever had one of these type of visitations, you know what I'm talking about. Visitations, here's some differences, standouts when you have an actual visitation. These are what I say. Visitation, usually the spirit has a message. Could be a 1-sentence thing, or in one case it was a whole dialogue. The first time I had this with my teenage friend, Brian Hunt, who was killed, he talked to me quite a bit up in heaven. He took me up there. I'll get into that. I'm not going to retell the whole story. And their 1 sentence or their dialogue is intended to help you along in life. That's a big difference. They tell you something, or they just show up to you to say, I'm all right, I love you, or give you a message that you need to, whatever their message is. In my case, it was you need to move on with your life, and my mom said, this has to be this way, just for now. But both of those were the same. It was a message intended to help me out. And the other one was something else. In my case, number 1, it was encouragement for me to weather life's coming hardships. And, I was 17 when the first one happened. I was taken up into heaven. My friend had died like a year and a half before that. I wasn't thinking about him. I think I was pretty much through the grieving process. But this happened. So you don't know when it's going to happen. It's God's timing. If God allows it, or they get through, I don't know. Could be down the road. It could be very quick after that person passes. It could be months or even years later. It may not ever happen at all. But I'll get into that more. He told me about my life to come and hardships. There's more to that. I'll talk about it. The other 2 cases were there to help me to recover from hardcore grieving that had me stuck, immobilized, and numb. With both my mom and Jen, I was just months after they died, numb, just numb. First with my mom, and I got beyond that with her help, a visitation. And then Jen just floored me, her sudden death, and I couldn't get beyond it. I would find myself months later just crying and grieving and just depressed and not really looking forward to the new day or life. You know how it is, maybe. It's hard. Stuck, immobilized, numb. Dreams of deceased people don't behave this way. They don't give you that communication. First you know that you're in the presence of the actual person. You know it. Just like you know the difference between a dead body and a living person. You will instinctively sense their presence. You will. And then they'll have a message for you usually to help you out, to help you. That's the difference between a dream of somebody and a visitation. Another one is the settings. It could be unearthly. Twice I was taken up to heaven. And once it was in a black void. I've never had those before. Never dreamt. It's the only time in my life I ever found myself in a completely black void. Facing somebody I love very much. That come out of the darkness to give me a message. And they appeared to be well. The other two was definitely in a heavenly setting. One was a vast garden, paradise, living color. The other was upon leaving that place, and it was a misty, cloudy place and a ledge, rocky ledge. The setting could be unearthly. Another one, they may leave you feeling healed. You know you've had a visitation if you had the things I just talked about, and you feel the next day much better from your grieving. Like a huge weight has been lifted off of you. And leave you feeling healed and grieving and okay with moving forward in life and assured that your loved one, you feel assured they're all right. My mother had this with my father, and she wanted everybody to know that he's all right when he appeared to her. And you feel that way. They're all right. You feel relieved. They're all right. That's what I think the biggest part, where I just worried how they are. They're beyond my control to help out if they need it. But they let me know, I'm all right, we're all right. And they're watching after you. Dreams don't do that for you. See, these are some differences between having a visitation and just dreaming about somebody when you're going through a hard time. All right, now here's the 11 takeaways, all right? That was just what I say, how you can tell the difference, how these visitations are different than a dream, in my opinion, my observations that I need to put my glasses back on. Oops. I need another pair of glasses now. Dollar store reading glasses. Takeaway number 1. First thing, when I saw them, I was delighted and shocked. And I was amazed to see these people again. It was them. It was delightful, but I was also shocked, especially with Jen, to see her again. I didn't think I ever would, not while I'm alive here anyway, but I did. And it was delightful, but I was also quite shocked to see her walk out of that void, walk right up to me. Takeaway number 2, and this is a big one. It is very apparent that in 2, my mother and Jen, that they were both aware of my grieving and of my prayers to God concerning them and of my words to them individually. If you don't know whether or not, I didn't know whether or not they could hear me or not. And I would pray to God a lot, reverently, and asking for guidance and asking God to help them. And whatever I feel led to pray to God, I'd pray. And then I would talk to them, not knowing if they could hear me or not. But I'd say, I love you, miss you, I hope you're all right, whatever I'm saying to them. I said a lot of things. Well, I didn't know whether or not they were hearing me, but I felt led. That's how I felt led to do that prayerfully. You know what? From what I can see, they can hear you. Possibly see you. They can hear you. Unless probably if they've gone to some other place that's not good. Like they've been condemned. separated. But if they're in heaven or on their way to heaven, they can hear you. That's my mother heard I was grieving. Jen heard me grieving. And they came to let me know, to comfort me, to let me know to move on, that they were all right. They can hear you, and God will hear your prayers too. That's a big one. They can hear you. That's what I took away from my 3 visitations. My friend Brian, when I was 17, oh my God, I grieved so hard when he died. It hurt me really, really bad. It was my first encounter with the death of a friend, a good friend, and it was the first experience with that, and it was tough. He got killed suddenly too. Okay, takeaway number 3. I'm moving through these. There's 11 of them. They looked very much alive and well in all. They didn't look shadowy, ghostly, didn't look like statues. They looked very much alive, in the pink of health, full of vitality, and they looked well. They looked good. 2 of them were in glorified bodies. And that would be my old friend Brian. In life, he was a short, stout guy with close cropped hair, kind of combed over to one side, white guy, stocky guy, probably 5'10", kind of work boots, jeans, flannel shirt or t-shirt, kind of rough and tumble guy, but he laughed a lot, and I know he loved God. I know he did. I know I think my mother brought him to Christ. But when I saw him in heaven, and I knew it was him, because that started out with me suddenly reliving his death through his eyes. And I knew how and where he died, and started out by seeing what he was seeing through his eyes as he was killed that night. And then instantly I was in heaven, and he was talking to me. He didn't look like a short, stocky guy in boots and stuff. Like my mother, he was wearing a white robe with a belt, sash, and he had shoulder-length brown hair, and he was about my height to say, I'm 6 foot. So he had his glorified body, and I think somewhere in the Bible, Christ talks that we will have glorified bodies in heaven. And my mother looked glorified. She looked like she might have been 28 or 30, and beautiful blonde hair, looked like her, but even better. I think better than she ever looked. Because even when you're in your prime, it's not perfect. And she had a golden glow about her, a slight golden glow about her. And she had a white robe that came down and had a gold belt tied around her waist. So they didn't look like shadows. They looked more vital and alive than me, honestly. I think in what Christ said, our glorified bodies that he will give us. Now Jen, she looked well. She looked like herself. But she looked like a healthy version of herself. She looked the same clothes she always wore that I remembered her in. And it was distinctive, kind of hippie clothes. And her hair, always liked her hair, looked good. Her complexion looked good. Her countenance, she didn't look angry or fearful. She looked frustrated with me when she said, you need to move on with your life now. Like she was really wanting me to get through my head. I need to move on with my life now. And then I looked away, and I wished I hadn't, because she's walking right up to me. And, Tim, you need to move on with your life now. So they looked all right. They didn't look like ghosts or anything spooky. Even her, she wasn't what I would say in her glorified form yet, but I don't know at all. I'm just sharing with you my experience. But she still looked, as I recall her, but at the healthiest point I'd ever seen her. Because before she died, the poor woman wasn't doing very well. And she wasn't very old either. But that's gone. She's doing all right. Had to be. If she came up to give me that message, either she did it to help me out, or she did it because a higher power said, you need to go to him and help him out. Which means she's in his will, God's will, and such. So they looked all right. Yeah. Let's take away 3. They looked very much alive and well and all. 2 were in glorified bodies and in white robes, young, 30-ish, vibrant, flawless versions of their earthly forms. My mom had a golden glow about her. Jen was in the void. I don't know if but that's where I saw her. It was in a black void. But she looked as I knew her, dressed the same, hair the same, exactly the same. But she looked healthy and vibrant. She looked well. Okay, takeaway number 4. Each of them had a distinct purpose in their visitation, and that was to give me a message and encourage me. Dreams don't do that, usually, that I know of. They had a singular course. Jen has singular course. Tell me I need to move on with my life now. And my mother was to help encourage me the same. I need to move on with my life because in her own words from beyond, she told me from heaven, where I've met her, was that it has to be this way. And she held my hands and standing right in front of me. And she said, it has to be this way. She said, just for now. And released my hands and went straight up. And my friend Brian, however, he had a long discussion with me. I was only 17. I was walking down a path with him in paradise. Brian's the one that was killed suddenly. And I witnessed his death through his eyes. That's how I know it was him. And that's why that happened, so I would know it was him. Because he didn't look like the guy I knew as Brian Hunt. The rough and tumble, kind of 18-year-old. He looked more like in his late 20s. I couldn't get a good look at him. Just a peripheral. He was walking by my side. But I could see enough of him to see that he was my height, had long brown hair and a white robe, and he had a very, very tender, gentle voice. So they looked well. But his message to me at the end was to encourage me that life was going to be hard. He told me some things that were going to happen in my life. And he was greatly concerned, it troubled him, that I was going to go through some hardships. And everything he said that was going to happen, happened. Except for the end of it. He said, stop walking. He said, I want you to remember, Tim, it's all going to work out for you in the end. He said, remember that. It's going to work out for you in the end. And that was the end of it. We stopped walking and I woke up and I said, wow, I remember that to this day, all of it. Except the parts that I wasn't supposed to remember. And I'll get on to that.